but I'm the creative director at Freehive. I've contributed to a bunch of stuff. I don't know if any of you recognize any of these: Inkscape, Fedora, Design, Elementary, AntennaPod, Scale, stuff like that. There might be a couple others. I couldn't remember. I went to school, got some formal training on business stuff, marketing and entrepreneurship mostly. And I worked for a while as a marketing executive until I realized that job was way too boring. And I got back into creative stuff, which was kind of where I started. But you don't need any of that. That's just, I just want to make sure you know who I am. Okay, so Freehive is my creative agency. We're kind of like remote, distributed, mostly contractors, just kind of future pirates. So like, you know, we scale up and scale down for projects. It's a small team, but we've done stuff for some people. Canonical, we did the desktop video, the release video, like a year ago or something. We've done a bunch of GNOME release videos. We've been helping with Thunderbird. They have a new homepage that it was a kind of a quick project that we wanted to get done, but we're working on redesigning their whole site. And then System 76, a number of years ago, if any of you saw that like cartoon/game thing they did, where you like return to Thalio and then like went around these different worlds. That was like our big like first project for open source stuff. And before that, we just worked for boring, non-commercial other people. So what? Okay. Why should you care about any of this? So what I hope to do is in the appropriate language of our event, I'm trying to open source my career. I just want you to like know what I know. Now, like open source, it doesn't mean everything I'm doing is the best way. There might be better ways, but take it. Ask questions if you don't understand. Take what's useful to you. Throw the rest out. Repurpose it. Make it better, okay? So the whole point here is just for you to succeed. I'm not like the god of marketing, okay? But I've done a lot of it, and hopefully what I hope to give you is a framework that you can kind of, we'll try to put it to practice today, but hopefully something you can take with you and continue to reuse on your own work. So, okay. I like the black slides because they don't blind me as much. I should have done those, I should have inverted that. We do have this thing that's a microphone, if you've seen it, where you can comment. So let me just kind of give you, well, okay. Marketing applies to about anything. It has a bad name because, frankly, there's some annoying people that use it as a tool to like do annoying things. But the reality is, whatever you want, it's maybe not the appropriate name, but anytime you're interfacing something you had to offer to someone else in a marketplace of options, that's when marketing's valuable. So if you live in a free society, which I assume most of you do, then marketing's useful. If you are in a prison cell, well, maybe, I don't know, I've never been in prison, but I assume there's still use for marketing there. Okay, so this is the framework we're going to cover at a high level. You need to identify an opportunity, because you can't promote something that no one wants if it has no value to people. So that's more of a strategic level. And then we need to position, I don't know, is the audio picking up adequately? I hope people online can hear this. They can. So once we have an opportunity, we need to position the solution we have in a way that is appealing to them. And then we need to connect with them. And then we need to learn from our experience trying to do all these things and start over if need be, or go back in different steps, okay? You skip any of these steps, you don't win. Now, we're gonna jump into identify the opportunity. And I happen to know that it doesn't, okay. You won't win because I don't get to be in this part for a lot of my clients. They've already kind of decided who they're selling to, and and they have an existing business or something. So this is more of a strategic portion. But these are the questions that we're going to kind of answer. So what problems am I able to solve? This seems like elementary school stuff, and I apologize, but it is elementary school stuff. If marketing was hard, I wouldn't be able to do it. So if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. Really simple stuff, but these are important ideas. What problems am I able to solve? Who are my solutions valuable to? Who else? How else are people solving these problems? You'll rarely have an instance where your solution is the first time somebody's ever solved a problem. Even if there's not a technical solution for what the problem is, maybe they're solving the problem with paper and pencil or some other way, Post-it notes. You need to be aware of that. And then, where is the opportunity for me to succeed? Okay, especially in a landscape where, there are competitors, and we'll talk about that. You need to find that space where what you have to offer is actually valuable to a specific group of people. So let's jump into this. Any questions at this point? We're going to go through each of these one by one. So I don't want to run too fast. Are we good? Okay. What problems am I able to solve? Okay. This is an important way to frame, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it's important to frame what you're offering in kind of a problem solution way. And one of the things I'll harp on over and over again, if there's one thing you learn from this presentation that I think will be valuable moving forward, is to get outside of yourself and get into the mind and life of the person that you're trying to promote to. Because it doesn't matter, you don't matter, basically. They're not walking around thinking, yeah, I wish somebody had something they wanted me to do, okay? It's not how they're living. But people are walking around with problems in their life, and your job is to recognize what those problems are from their perspective, and then communicate to them from their perspective. So the problem is whenever we have something cool, we're like, hey, check out this thing, and it does this, and it does this, and it does this, and it does this. And then people are like, so what? They don't get it. Oh, but it also does this, and it's better than this, and they just don't get it. And so the first step, what problem am I solving? Now, we're going to take a pause. How many people are here, and if you don't want to raise your hand, you don't have to raise your hand for any, but who's here kind of primarily, they're part of some free software project and they want to promote that? Okay, about half of you, a little bit more. Who's here maybe they have a business that they might want to, and it could be all of these. You have like some business use case that, freelancing or run a small business. Okay, some of you. How many of you are interested in like marketing yourself kind of from improve your career? Yeah, we've got some of those too. Okay, so this applies to everyone. So I'm a software engineer, right? I give myself a title. I'm not actually a software engineer. What problem am I solving? This is where you guys chime in. And it seems obvious to you, right? But what problems are you solving for somebody as a software engineer? Software problems. Okay, what's a software problem? Implementation of functionality. Fixing bugs, okay. We're getting close. Yeah, fixing bugs, implementing solutions. What other problems are we solving? I know this seems like maybe too obvious.
I would say creating value for somebody else.
Creating value. Now we're getting closer, right? Sorry. Tell me what you said. Shareholder value. Yeah, we're not going to say that. We're getting closer, okay? So it helps to kind of know who, I'm going to skip ahead because this helps a little bit. So who are my solutions valuable to? So this becomes a little bit easier when I start thinking about who I'm selling to. So if I'm looking for work, let's just assume I'm not going through some HR person. Let's say I'm working with like somebody in the software team that's hiring a mid-level developer. I don't know. What problem am I solving for them?
Finding solutions that can help do the job.
They want somebody that can do the job, okay? They want somebody that can maybe mentor younger engineers on the team. They want somebody that isn't going to cause more work for them, right? I think you can assume when you're trying to get work that your first job is to create less work for the person hiring you. That's a good place to start when you're thinking about the solutions that you're providing is for this person that I'm interacting with, what does my solution, my skills, my education, my experience, all that stuff, what problem is that solving? Well, I'm making them look good. I'm giving them less work to do. I'm helping grow the net functionality of the whole team. I'm bringing new expertise onto the team, right? These are problems that I'm solving for a person. And so that's the first place you have to start looking. Now, that's like kind of looking for a job. So let's, what's another example? Is anyone willing to share what software project they work on? Tell us. Okay, I'll give you the cool mic so that we can all hear.
It's a Python library solving equations that are provided in math JSON format. So you write equations, mathematical expressions in JSON, and this library solves them.
Okay, so you have a snake that magically goes and eats math problems? Just kidding. I know what Python is. So you have a Python library that solves math, okay? That's a pretty specific thing, right? So I don't want to skip too far ahead because we'll pick on this. We're going to get into some more of this. Let's use that example to jump to the next. How else are people solving that problem?
They are developing their own syntax for equations.
Their own syntax, yeah. So by providing a library, the problem you're solving for them is?
So that they can write their expressions in JSON.
They can write their expressions in JSON and you're maintaining it and they get to be lazy, right?
That's what we hope for.
That's what we all want, right? We want someone else to do all the work, and we just do the fun part. But you like that part; you're doing that part for them. That's the problem you're solving now. So we're thinking about how else are people solving these problems? Well, they might be doing it themselves. Are there any other like competing libraries? Like anyone that sends you hate emails? Just kidding.
No, I wouldn't say competitors, but rather complementers. I didn't coin the term math JSON. Someone else did it. The person who wrote Cortex.js library, who is doing something similar in JavaScript, but not exactly the same. Solving the expressions is not their primary task.
So you're in, we'll get to it in the next section. You're in what we would call a blue ocean. I'm not going to skip it. I'm going to seeding that term right now. So when you think about competitors, and I hope you're all kind of thinking in your minds about like your own situation. Now, a competitor might not be like, I'm using kind of businessy terms, but you know, a competitor would be maybe other job applicants. You know, they're not really competitors, but they're solving the same problem for the person you want to get a job with, right? Now, you have direct competitors. So if we go back to the job example, a direct competitor would be someone else applying for the same job, right? Then you have indirect competitors. Maybe the hiring manager is like, well, how much of this job can I just solve with something else? Maybe I can use Microsoft Copilot. If anyone's used that, it's not going to work. But maybe that's what they're thinking. So an indirect competitor, maybe that's like some AI engine or something that they might, or maybe, you know, I'm hiring an engineer to build this thing, whereas maybe we'll just outsource that or whatever. So you get the idea between direct and indirect. So a one-for-one, pretty close to one-for-one direct competitor, kind of an indirect competitor. Now the reason you need to do that, well, okay, I keep skipping ahead. Sorry, I get too excited. Because oftentimes people do think about their direct competitors. So if you're like doing a free software project, and let's say you know, have a music player, right? Like, well, our direct competitor is Spotify. Because that's the same thing we're doing. We have like an open source Spotify. Okay, well, that's good. That's good. But what you're not, you have to be mindful, your indirect competitor is maybe every single, you know, podcast player in the world. Because you just assume that, well, what you don't realize is that people are finding solutions to your problem different ways. And so what you have to start thinking more broadly about who are my indirect competitors and who are my direct competitors. And the goal is this next part. Okay, so the goal is to figure out where is the opportunity for me to succeed. And so I mentioned, okay, we'll pause here and answer some questions and maybe give you a minute to process some of this in just a moment. Graphing. So if you were to draw a graph, this is hard really in the abstract, which is why I think maybe we should pause and then have you kind of write down. We'll jump to the slide where you see all the questions and start writing that down. So I think this will make more sense with specific solutions. But if you're thinking on an X and Y axis, you could have a three-dimensional matrix. If you can create a four-dimensional matrix in your mind, that's even better, but you're like way smarter than me and you can't draw it. So we'll stick to 2 dimensions. But if you're thinking about, what's a good example here? Anyhow, you draw your matrix of 2 value angles. Now in products, almost always, one of those axes is price. The other axis might be convenience or ease or simplicity, right? And then you're going to map on here all those different competitors, direct and indirect. And what you're looking for, now this is hypothetically happening before you've created your product already, so some of you have already done this. But what you're looking for in a business perspective is that what we call a blue ocean. Now that's kind of gory, there's these marketing guys that came up with it. So like there's shark infested waters and then there's this blue ocean. Now if you create a solution that's in a space where there are 5 other open source solutions, there are 10 commercial solutions, and most people have already picked which one they want to go with, you're gonna get eaten up by sharks. Sorry. Like, there's nothing I can do for you. You're in a bad space. Now, at least on a certain matrix, you're looking for, where is that space, that combination of values, where I have space off from everyone else? Where I provide some kind of value that no one else is providing, or at least maybe just one, maybe. You gotta find that spot to park your solution, or to create your solution. So again, this is all strategic stuff. Usually, I don't get to do this kind of stuff. Like I said, I'm coming in, they already have a product. So, you know, we're just making the best we can, but once in a while, I'll get hired on for a project, and we're just in shark-infested waters. And, you know, we do our best, but we're just getting eaten alive. So avoid that, find blue ocean. Okay, so I think the next slide, all right, so we'll just take like, what do you want, like 3 or 4 minutes to like kind of answer these questions for your own, and then maybe if you're willing to share, you can. I'm not gonna embarrass anyone, so, you know, if you don't want to, that's okay. So are we good to take 5? All right. And if people are online, I'm sorry we remember you, we see you, we can't see you, but do this at home, and hopefully this will make sense. Oh, it's not streamed? Okay, I'll pretend there's people out there. We know there are millions of you. All right. Does anyone have any questions about how, what we've kind of talked about that I can hear? Yeah.
So what do you do when you come on board project when there's traffic? What's the first thing you say in patient?
Find a new job. Just kidding. That's a good question. Let's hold on to that because I think people would want to answer that. And I think the group might be able to help. So thank you.
Yeah. Is that why
How much time do you guys want? You ready to kind of keep moving? All right. Anyone struggling figuring out like how this graph would work for like your specific situation? So I'll give you an example. Let's do, like 5 feet. That wasn't me. Oh. All right, sorry, internet people. Okay, so let's do an example just for this to make sense. So let's just do an easy one, which one axis is, let's say salary and skills, right? So you want a really high salary and you have a lot of skills? Well, welcome to shark-infested water, right? Now, if you want a really low salary and you have a lot of skills, there's nobody there. So you're probably going to get the job. High salary, no skills, that's blue ocean. You're probably not getting the job. Low salary, low skills, lots of people, right? Does that kind of help paint the picture a little bit? Now, again, this is like 2 axes, salary and skills. People's decisions are more complicated than that. But once you've identified what problems you're solving for people, you can start to create these and think about where can I find. So it's, you know, you really lose here on this 2 axes if you have a lot of skills and you want a high salary. But if you introduce a 3rd axis, which I can't think of it off the top of my head because I'm sleep deprived, you might actually find that space. So if we were to break out skills and, maybe it's a specific type of skill that's rare, you're going to find that kind of space where you have something unique to offer people. Does that make sense? Now, I'll admit, like I said, I don't get to do this a lot, but this is important. Now, most of you already have careers and already have software projects you've worked on. So we're gonna kind of shuffle ahead. Now, there was a question, a good question. What do you do if you come on into a situation and you're already in shark-infested waters? You're trying to provide a solution where there are too many competitors that are doing the exact same thing. And I'm curious from you guys, what would you do? And we do have a mic ball thing that we get to throw around for fun if you have any ideas. What would you guys do? Grab the mic and then we'll pass it back.
I don't know. This is actually my case about salary and skills. I may search for something that differentiates me, that puts me apart from this shark fest. Let's say a language. Let's say some experience in some other field or something that really they say, this guy, he knows this. He doesn't know these things, but he knows this. He has this very, very special thing.
Yeah, and I love that in language. If I was to add another dimension to this, I might find high salary, high skills has a lot of people, but not a lot of them that speak 2 languages. So that's kind of your blue ocean. You're trying to identify that space. Thank you. Go ahead. Will you toss the ball back? Or cube, I guess.
Yeah, so one option is to identify another scale, and if it's not possible, to be the loudest shark, the shark that everyone knows.
Yeah, and sometimes when marketers, you're looking for the optimal solution, but it's not always optimal. And one example I give people is convenience stores, right? Every country, everywhere has the equivalent of a store where you get candy and they sell cigarettes and candy and whatever, right? And they're on corners everywhere. There's no secret way to be the best convenience store. Which convenience store do people go to? They go to the nearest one. They go to the one that's closest to them. And so sometimes, if you can't be in a safe space, well, at least be close, be the first person, be the loudest. I liked that. That's maybe the only option you have. Now, usually if you dig long enough and you think hard enough, you can find a blue ocean, a space where the right combination of values lands you. And that's what you need to focus on and drill on. That's your unique place. Okay. Any questions about this before we move on to positioning? Because that's kind of what we're getting into anyway. Any thoughts or questions? All right, how are we doing on time? Because I'm worried. I don't know if... All right. We'll do our best. I apologize if we're going too fast. Okay. So positioning. We know roughly where we want to be in the blue ocean, but how do we succeed with our combination of skills? How do we orient ourselves relative to the people we're selling to? That's what we mean by positioning. Okay. This is the space where I live all the time. And this is not usually what people hire me to do. So like I said, I run a creative agency. So they'll hire me and they'll say, hey, we need a website. And I say, why? And they don't know. And so we're like, okay. So we take a step back, and this is where I end up half the time. Which is important because before I build a website, you can go get a website for $10 somewhere. Don't hire me to do just a website that you don't know what it's for and who it's for and what it's doing. Just go pay $10 and whatever. So, but this is, so I'm here a lot. So the questions are, who am I communicating to? What value does my solution provide them specifically? How is my solution different, better, or special? What evidence can persuade them to believe what I'm saying? And what's their first step? What do they need to do? So these are really fundamental things, but oftentimes people aren't thinking about this. Now, this presentation is on, the whole thing is on the Ubuntu website, so if you want to download it afterwards, you can. Even with all my typos, I built this in Scribus because I wanted, like, for stupid reasons, but I didn't spell check it. So just don't tell me when you see a bad typo on here. All right, who am I communicating to? All right. Sometimes, so you've heard the term probably demographics. Male, female, age 30 to 40, you know, American, Brazilian, German, right? Demographics, where I live, how old I am, what my gender is, whatever, right? These are not that useful. I don't know why. They don't really effectively, in my experience, give you anything. So what I'm more interested in are what are called psychographics. Whoa, that sounds scary. It is. I didn't make that term up. No, it's not pictures of psychos. I never thought about it that way until this very moment. I'm like, what in the world do they think that is? Okay. These are people's beliefs, their values. It's who their social groups are. It's their motivations, okay? It's getting into people's minds. What do they want? Why do they want it? Who do they hang out with? Basically it. That is important. So if you're thinking about who you're marketing your solution to, that's the first thing to understanding a potential user or a potential employer or a potential customer. What's important to them? And we were talking about this earlier, right? So some engineering managers hiring me, what are they motivated by? First thing, not getting fired. They want job security. They want their job to be easier. And then they want technical excellence. But you can't have, they don't want it in a different order, because technical excellence, but makes their job harder and risks them getting fired, ain't gonna fly, right? So you need to understand what are their motivations and their beliefs, right? They believe wholeheartedly in C as the one true language, all right? And you're a JavaScript developer, you got a long way to go to cross that bridge for them. But, you know, sorry, I'm poking fun, but yeah, those kinds of things are important, what we call psychographics. Okay, the second part of who am I communicating to? All right, I made these terms up. I don't know what other people call them. I have deciders, I have influencers, and I have gatekeepers. And I don't know if that's intuitive to you. But sometimes when you're communicating to people, the person you're talking to, maybe they get to decide, but there are unseen gatekeepers, okay? So using the hiring example again, okay? Maybe I'm actually interviewing with some HR person, and I know what their motivations are, and, you know, look, I got all the right checkboxes here for you. But what you don't realize is behind the scenes, there's a gatekeeper, which is the unseen engineering manager who either is saying yay or nay. They say, I think this is a good candidate behind the scenes. And then your resume is written just to be awesome for a HR person. You ain't gonna win, okay? So gatekeeper is kind of like they're not necessarily a decision maker, but they're a decision stopper. And then influencers might be people that are part of the conversation. They don't get to make the decision. So oftentimes, that's the person you're talking to. They're just a decision influencer, and the decision is being made somewhere else. So thinking about who you're trying to reach in those terms can help you structure your messaging to encompass the scope of who you need to talk to and what kind of motivations they may have. Okay, segmentation. Okay, market segments. This is overdone, but really, when we're communicating, you want to sound to the HR person like the perfect candidate to the HR person. And to the engineering manager, you want to sound the perfect candidate to the engineering manager. And it's hard to sound the perfect to both. Because to the HR person, you say, well, I know X and blah, 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 and I wrote this algorithm, and I contributed to this repo open source project, and I'm blah, blah, blah. And they're just like, I don't know what any of this is. My job is just to make sure you're not crazy. So there's a natural segment where you're communicating to two audiences. So the engineering manager, they have certain things they need to hear. Your HR person has certain other things. The same happens with a free software project. So let's use your Python library, okay? I don't know anything about it. I'm not that smart. But hypothetically, there are people that know what that does that you can communicate to at a technical level, and they're going to immediately understand the value. But hypothetically, let's say they work in a corporation where they've been doing it the same way forever. And that person now has to go to that either gatekeeper or decision maker and say, hey, we want to use this other library. And they're going to say, all they're going to see is danger, danger, danger. We're going to break something, I'm going to lose my job, right? You have to communicate to them in a different way. You have to provide, you're speaking to two segments, two different audiences, that have different motivations, different ways of talking, a technical and non-technical. And understanding those allows you to communicate effectively. Okay, personas we're not going to get into, but does everyone understand the idea of a persona? It kind of became a thing with, oh my gosh, Scrum or what? Agile, yeah, Agile. Sorry, I'm supposed to be asleep right now. But yeah, with Agile, they did the personas thing. It's a similar concept. Now, what can be helpful is early on, if you're struggling to understand who you're communicating to start creating personas of these different segments. What you're writing down is basically what we have here. What are their values, their interests, their motivations? What role do they have as an influencer, a decision maker? And then we break them up into different personas so that we can start visualizing who we're talking to. Because you're just in your bedroom in front of a computer screen, and it's hard to imagine who this person is. When you start giving them a personality, then it engages that part of your brain that intuitively understands how to solve some of these things. So does that make sense? So personas can be a useful thing. I don't tend to write them a lot anymore, but sometimes I will, especially when I'm working in a group environment and I need everyone to be on the same page. So because sometimes if I have in my mind who the customer is, that's different than the guy next to me or the gal over here. And so when we write out the persona and we create that and we read it and we understand it, then that becomes the litmus test. That becomes when we're getting further along saying, well, would Sally Sue here understand what we're talking about? No. Do we have a way to get her to a place where she can understand it? Yes. Okay. So that's when personas are useful, especially in group settings. But you should at least be thinking about it individually. Okay. Man, there's so much to cover. What questions do you have? Any thoughts, questions? Does this make sense? Okay, I'm getting some nods. And I think a couple nods from sleeping people. No, I'm just kidding. No. All right.
Right.
Yes.
How do you build the psychographics
Okay, so the question for the video is, how do you graph the psychographics? I don't. I usually encapsulate them in a persona, or like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years, so I just kind of, I'm thinking about that, and they just become one of my multiple personalities when I'm scrutinizing things. But yeah, so if you're wondering, if you can't remember psychographic, I promise you it's safe to search it. I don't know, okay, I shouldn't promise that, I don't know. But actually, you should be able to get online and you'll find a bunch of different people's spins on it. But really what it is just getting at the humanity and the interests of the person, however you want to write it down. I don't think there's a rule. I don't think there's really value in doing it, if you, bullet list or a graph or whatever works best for you. I don't have a big opinion. Any other questions before we scroll forward? All right. So we know who we're communicating to, and it's probably more than one person. So from here on out, this would normally splinter. So let's say I have 3 different types of people I'm selling to, or if you're trying to get a job, maybe it's 2. Maybe there's the person that does the first interview and the person that does the second interview. Okay? But this will splinter out, and I'm thinking about these for each segment or persona. So what value does my solution provide them? Okay, this is kind of cliche. Has anyone heard the explanation, the difference between features and benefits? Okay. This is where people get into trouble. The features, we think about the features. When we're making something, my library does this. Or if I'm getting a job, I've got this bachelor's degree or this master's degree or this PhD. I worked at this place for 7 years. I did this. These are the technical, truthful features of me, of my product. The phone has a 7-inch screen. It's got a 4K resolution and a 6,000 milliamp hour battery. All right, those are features. Features are so what? Boring. Features, if you give people features, they have to figure out, okay, well, is 6,000 milliamp hour good? You know, 7-inch, now I've got to figure out, well, how's that compared to some other thing? Okay. Benefits are, you have a phone that will last 2 days long. And you have a screen that you can see all the detail, right? And a processor that keeps up with all your media but doesn't suck the battery out of your life. The benefits, those are my benefits. Those are the things I care about. I don't care about how you do it. I care about what to get out of it. And this is the big difference between features and benefits. So naturally, almost all of us will go straight to our features. That's what we know. Benefits require you to get into the mind of the person you're communicating to, right? That's where this persona comes in. So what's the benefit to the end user? You know, I don't have to maintain a library to keep this working. That's a huge benefit. And you need to be talking about that. The features, yeah, you can have them on there, but lead with benefits and then follow up with features. Tangible, intangible value. Okay. Tangible value, something I can measure, something I can quantify. Let's say I have a Tesla. I don't. Let's say I do. Tangible value, I get to sleep in my car while it drives me to work. That's cool. Tangible value, I get 30 minutes more sleep every day in my hypothetical Tesla. It doesn't crash into a semi-truck and kill me while I'm sleeping. Tesla, I want your sponsorship. Just kidding. I'm sorry, I'm getting into trouble. I'm really sleepy, so I'm making jokes about Tesla, and now I'm going to get sued. All right, that tangible value, the specific thing I can measure. Intangible value, I get the smug satisfaction of being better than all of you. because, you know, I'm better because I own a Tesla. Sorry. I'm exaggerating here, right? But you get the idea between the tangible and the intangible. Now, it's not always like I'm portraying it as intangibles kind of chumpy value. It is if that's what's important to me, that's the value to me. But coming back to kind of the hiring manager example, so the tangible value is I fill the job, right? I meet the requirements that somebody's set out. The intangible value is maybe that this seems like a person I could get along with. Okay, this seems like a positive person. How do you quantify somebody being positive? Like, you can't. Now, if any of you have hired anybody, you'll understand that that intangible value might be more important than the tangible value, right? So you have to be thinking, when you're thinking about what value am I providing people, you need to be thinking about both, the tangible and the intangible. And for engineers, almost universally, you go straight to the tangible, because that's the world you live in. Concrete problem, I have to come up with a mathematical way of solving a very specific problem, right? That's very tangible. But don't miss the intangible, because that can be more important. Any questions on that? All right. How is my solution different, better, or special? Okay. I don't have any extra bullets on this because I think it's somewhat intuitive. And it's kind of hearkening back to that blue ocean thing. We need to kind of communicate why we're in a blue ocean for them, what that matrix or what that three-dimensional graph or five-dimensional graph, what that is that lands me in a unique place for your product or for yourself. This is basically what that is. What makes you different, better, special. You need to communicate that. People won't do the work to figure that out. It's safe to assume that everyone you communicate to doesn't care. If that's the default, you just assume that they don't really care, they're not going to take the time to figure it out, then you'll win on communicating, because that's going to require you to spend time solving those problems for them, helping them understand what that is. Okay, so I'm not going to dwell on that for the sake of time. Okay, evidence. What evidence can persuade them? Okay, so hopefully by this point in my messaging, I have convinced them that I am the best thing this planet has ever seen. I came down, my parents sent me down in an asteroid from a faraway planet. I was raised here, and now I have superpowers with laser eyes, and I can save the world, and I'm a news reporter, and I wear an S on my chest. And if you guys still don't know what that reference is, I'm sorry, but I'm Superman, and you can believe it, except no one's going to believe it, okay? So you need to prove it to them. So it's kind of cliche, but when you look on websites, you always get, like, for the big brands, the people that are paying a lot of money for this stuff, you're going to get testimonials somewhere. And have you ever thought why they're there? Probably not. But they're there for this reason, because they're saying, we do everything you ever dreamed of. And then here are real people that are saying the same thing, okay? Another way to provide evidence to people is through sampling. So they say, hey, here's a free demo. You can try it out. On your resume, what's the evidence? Sorry, I can't. Previous experience is evidence, right? Oh, that's a company I recognize, and they hired them for 7 years. That's something. What else is on there? Education. Yeah. You want to know one of the big ones? Letters of recommendation, right? Some prior hiring manager that says, hey, I didn't fire this guy. He left because we couldn't afford him. He's so good. If you can get him to say that, you know, but that's evidence. So at a certain point, you need to provide that. Now, you don't lead with the evidence because why? They won't know how to make sense of it. You give it to them too early, and it's just data. You give it to them later when they're a little bit more interested. They've already like, this is what we need. I just want to believe it's true. Here you go. Here's the proof. It is true. I am Superman. Okay. All right. And then lastly, people lose this one too. What is their first step? Now, this is obvious when you're going in for a job interview, so we're going to skip that. But if somebody's on your website, what do you want them to do? Where do they go? And people mess this up all the time. It's like, this seems amazing. I want to use this new application. It looks like it works on Linux. Where do I download it? I can't find the download button. Oh, I've got to go to their documentation. I've got to go to the installation guide. I've got to find step 3 of the installation guide where finally I find a link to the zip file or the tar, whatever. And now I can download it and finally figure this thing out. Okay? You're going to lose some people between like excited and like they know what to do. So what is their first step? You've got to get them to that first step. If it's a business, it's contact us or download this form or sign up for our email or whatever. Okay, so there are a couple principles here that I have out of here. Incremental conversions. I made that word up. I don't know that. I've never heard anyone talk about this. But I run into this all the time. Sometimes we think about people in kind of a binary mode. They're either not interested or way interested, okay? There's a bunch of in between. There are people that are kind of interested, and people that are pretty interested, and people that are, yeah, but maybe tomorrow. There's a range of interest, and you need to have ways to accommodate capturing people where they are at. So if it starts with nothing or sign up for a consultation with one of our sales engineers who will explore your solution and here fill out 15 form fields, okay? You're going to lose people. People that might be 90% there, but they're not there enough to give you like their job title and their birth date and their social security number and their credit card and their mom's maiden name. They're not there yet. So you need to recognize some people move along an incremental path to getting where you want. So that's where now in good design you have to provide a hierarchy because you do primarily want people to go all in. But you need to have alternate journeys for people that are less committed. Does that make sense? So that might be a hiring manager. Maybe you're reaching out to somebody you want a job with. And obviously our primary goal is to get the job. But look, if I can get that guy just to connect with me on LinkedIn or whatever, I'm at least 50% of the way. And when later he actually needs somebody or she needs to hire somebody, whoever it is, and I'm connected to them, and hopefully I'm having regular contact with them, right? So incremental conversions. Funneling, that's about kind of what I was talking about as far as hierarchy. It's knowing where the end result is and making sure that everything you do is funneling people towards that, not away from it, not I'm moving you towards filling out this contact form. Oh, but do you want to go read all of our documentation instead? No, get that out of the way. You don't want them getting sent off on some side journey. You want to get them to the conversion, okay? I know this might be hard and abstract, so I apologize, but you want to funnel people towards the end result. You don't want to send them off on side journeys. You need to understand where you're trying to get and what's most important. Kill the side journeys. Okay. All right. Man. I thought we'd have so much time. Go ahead. Yeah, let's pass the cube of knowledge.
So I have I'm interested in your opinion on this. So in point 3, how is my solution different, better, or special? Sometimes I find that in the free and open source software community in particular, people think that the fact that it's open source or it's Linux is somehow not cool or somehow has some negative association, and they try to hide that. Or their laptop can be opened up and repairable and all this, but that's too complicated for people, so let's hide that somehow. And to me, that's actually what makes it different, better, and special. But I see that people seem to think negatively sometimes about this, and I'm wondering if you notice this and if you have an opinion about this or thoughts on how to address that.
Yeah. So it comes down to who's that persona. So if you're the persona that they're trying to reach out to, they need to have that on there, right? But there might be someone else that they're targeting that maybe open source is scary to them, or that it sounds technical, or it sounds like, oh, does that mean there's a security vulnerability, right? So when you start thinking about these personas, these specific audiences, these segments of people, then what you do is you say, well, open source is kind of probably your primary value proposition, but if you're going to put it on there, you have to explain what it is, why it's not scary, and why it's actually good for them, right? Or you hide it. I don't know. I guess it would depend on the specific situation, but it does come down to, it's not always right and it's not always wrong. It really just depends on who you're targeting. But that's why it's important to know early on, who am I trying to communicate to? Because that determines what the answer is to that question. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? We're getting into, this is becoming hopefully more specific, more real, but was that a hand or? Okay. Okay, now we've got this plan all perfectly set up. We know where we're trying to fit in this blue ocean. We know how we're going to frame our message to, let's say, 2 or 3 different types of people that would be appealing to them. Okay, now we actually have to connect with them, right? Okay, so what we're going to cover is how. The how can I creatively reach my audience? The where can I creatively reach my audience? And what impression do I want to leave? That's not a typo. Figure out what the secret meaning is. Okay, sorry. I knew there would be a typo. I found it. Thanks for not telling me. All right. How can I creatively reach my audience? Okay. The how is the media. And I've made these terms up, so, you're not going to impress everyone if you use these terms. But this is how I think about it. So I've got static media. This is stuff that can't change. This is graphics, articles, print ads, static, non-movable stuff. I got played media. I was thinking about calling this like a temporal media, because like temporal means like time, the passage of time. I thought that would be super cool, but that no one would understand what I meant. So I just call it played media. So this is like video, and this is like audio, and then interactive media, okay? That would be like websites, virtual reality, talking to somebody in person, I guess, right? Interactive. Now, the reason I kind of spell it out this way is so that you're thinking about the different strengths and weaknesses of each of these, okay? Static media, generally speaking, is very portable. You can get it everywhere. You print something out, you leave it on the countertop, you put up a sign, it goes with you whenever, wherever, however. Static media is something that can have more information density, because it's not moving around, so you can pack it with a lot of stuff, but it gets bigger. Played media, that's a linear story. You got a start, you got a middle, you got an end. So you have to structure your messaging that way. Now we'll move past this, because I don't know if this is like super insightful, you guys, but this is how I have to think about it in the interactive media. So when I'm like I said, I'm running a creative agency, so this is the space where I'm in. They say, well, we have this audience that we need to reach. They're interested in this. They go to these kinds of places. They interact with this kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, well, we want to kind of try to hit these different things, but we want to hit them the right way. And where people, and this is where I think what I want you to consider, don't try to force this into that. And what happens is people want a video that tells their whole life story. It's like, my gosh, guys, it's going to be 30 minutes long. You're not going to keep anyone that long. Your video needs to be 3 minutes. Keep it 3 minutes, max. 30 seconds, awesome. And then lead them from here to maybe a website where they can choose their own adventure and find out the stuff they want to learn, okay? These things work together. And I should have written this on the presentation, I didn't, so I'll say it. Use the media that you're communicating with in the way that that media is good at communicating. So freeway signs, billboards, I don't know what they're called here in Europe. You've got like 2 seconds for somebody to read that. Like, don't put a lot of stuff on there. Like, you know, like it's just not gonna work. They're driving by, they barely notice it. If you can get them to even pay attention to it, that's awesome. And then give them one thing to do. And people criticize, like, oh, that billboard that doesn't say anything. Well, it can't, or it doesn't work. If you have to sort through 3 lines of text to find the phone number or whatever, good luck with a phone number and good luck with a long URL, right? So think about using the media as it's most appropriate. So print collateral like that you can hand out can have more information on it because people can consume it at their own pace. Interactive media like a website can have a lot more information on it. And I love it because you can get people to find the information that actually applies to them when you're thinking about those segments, right? So the handout, I don't know who's taking it and what they want to know. Or the interactive, they can kind of find their way. Just make sure they can. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Where can I creatively reach my audience? I don't have a thing big enough. Community events, social media, you know, publications, forums, podcasts, review sites, search engines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of places that you can find people. You just have to pair the media with the channel. We call this a channel, right? Where am I distributing this? So we're not going to spend a lot of time on it unless you want to. But okay. What you can be thinking about, though, when we get back to those personas, again, hopefully we're thinking about a specific person who may fit in with 2 or 3 other people, but specific person. I'm thinking about where will they be? What will their buying intention be if they're buying? Or their hiring intention, where will they be? Right? So I don't like LinkedIn. I'm sorry. It's like a company party. And it's always awkward. Everyone's like humble bragging left and right. I hate it. Sorry. LinkedIn, I want your sponsorship. I'm winning here. I got Coca-Cola, 0 sugar. All right. If you're coming late, you missed my bad sponsorship opportunity. Is my battery about to die? Hopefully not. Okay, 26 minutes. Thank you. All right. So your audience, your specific person, your hiring manager, your potential adopter of your software library, you're going to need to identify where they are. And then you need to match that with the right media for the right channel and be as creative as you can. But, you know, you might find them in all these places. Does that make sense? All right. All right, what impression do I want to leave? You know what a brand is, right? I'm from America. We know what brands are. You get the cow and you get the hot thing and you brand them. Sorry, Texas, I'm accepting sponsorship opportunities. All right. Brands are impressions, right? Poor cows. I'm having a hard time getting over this. All right. That's terrible. But a brand is an impression. And that's how I would think about it. Now, sometimes people think, oh, logo. Logo's my brand. No, logo's not your brand. A logo is part of what we would call your brand image, but it's just a part of it. There's also a term like brand voice. There's this project called HTMX. And, okay, you're nodding your head. You already know what I'm going to say. The guy's on social media, or on Twitter, and he's just crap posting about everyone and memeing left and right. And like everyone either loves him or hates him, okay? So if you want HTMX, you'll get it immediately. And but the thing is, that brand, that project has a distinct brand voice. Now, hopefully, your brand voice aligns up with the segments and the personas that you're trying to appeal to. Now, if you're trying to appeal to kind of a stuffy business manager that doesn't like social media and, you know, and you're crap posting on Twitter all the time, just hope they don't see it, because it's not going to line up, right? It's the wrong brand voice. Now, if you're trying to appeal to slightly irreverent developers who, you know, like internet memes, then your brand voice is going to work for you, right? So the voice is just kind of the general tone. It's the impression you're leaving. And it can be, that's kind of an extreme example, but are you formal? Are you casual? Do you prefer to be directly as, we do this for you? Or are you always referring to me in the third person? Are you referring to yourself in the third person? How personable do you want it to feel? These all leave an impression. Now, branding is generally a subtle impression. We don't really pick up on it, but it does affect us. Where designer people like me get grumpy is with like brand imaging. It's like, your website's so ugly. And you're like, well, it doesn't matter because like I've got the best technical solution on the planet. I don't need a good website. And that might be true for people who share your bad taste. Just kidding. No, but like what you're leaving is an impression. Unfortunately, unintentionally, you might be leaving the impression that you're not really put together, that this isn't a competent, capable solution. And so the image, the brand image impression you leave has an impact on how people assume your technical solution is. Long before they read your code, they're going to decide this is one guy in his basement working on this project. I and my boss will never buy into this. And they're going to move on. Your resume, it needs to look good, right? If people still do resumes, do they do resumes? No one will hire me, so I don't even try. But you know, it needs to look composed. You don't need to be a graphic designer, but don't leave the impression that you're sloppy and don't know how to put together a bullet list with the text all aligned straight, you know? It seems stupid to you, but like it does leave an impression. So what impression do you want to leave? And it does matter, especially when you're thinking about those audiences you're communicating to. Does that make sense? All right. I've heard it said that this is a Muhammad Ali quote. I don't know if it's true. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Is that Mike Tyson? And everybody has an ear worth biting. Mike Tyson, I'm taking sponsorships. All right. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? Things don't always work out. I left my, I worked for this e-commerce company for several years, and we'd like built up this super awesome paid search account, and I could put $1 in and get $5 out. It was awesome. It was like money machine. just advertise more, and we just were doing awesome. And I left that job, and I met this other guy, and like, hey, I can help you with this, and he needed help. And you know, I did all the same stuff, and I lost him thousands of dollars. It didn't work. It did not work at all. I did all the same things. You know, marketing is always an experiment. Now, if you're conducting an experiment, what do you need to do? You need to measure. You need to keep measurements. And you need to draw the correct conclusions. And then you need to repeat, right? That's essentially the model here, right? So measure what matters. This is where people get into trouble. Because Google's like, we'll gather all their information for you. And like, well, I don't know why I need to know all this, Google. Oh, trust me, you need to know like what city in, you know, rural Belgium they live in. You know, like you need to know this. You don't need to know that. Okay, Google gathers it for their own reasons, and then they share it with you so you feel good about it. They're gathering it for their purposes. The reality is, if you want ethical analytics, we don't need to get into this. You're going to have to make a judgment, but as a general rule of thumb, it means disclosure about what you're taking from people and not taking more than you need, okay? So I see all the time people are like gathering like contact forms. It's just like, I don't know why. It brings out the worst in marketers. They're like, oh, they're filling out a form for my email? Can I also get their age and what company they work at, and like who their neighbor is and what color their car is, and everything about them? Can I get all of that? Just add that to the form, and we'll make them optional. You don't need all that data. All you're doing when you gather all that data, other than it's just not ethical, and in certain countries like here probably, it's probably illegal. Now, unfortunately, I live in the Wild West, where you can gather all that information. That was another spot for Texas, looking for you. All right. So gather just what you need. Think about what information is actually valuable. If you're sending out an email list, do you need their first name? If you're not personalizing the email, no. If it's an optional field and you can only personalize half the emails, worthless. Just get rid of it. Just get their email. Magical. All right, there's other information that you can get. Okay, conversion tracking. All right, so I'm going to plug. Michael Tidell suggested Matomo as like an analytics solution. That's a good one. I've not used it a lot. I've used one called Plausible, which is, I guess, GDPR, a little bit more GDPR compliant out of the box. Those are great analytics tools for like the web. But there are other ways that you can track conversions. I should have written it on here. They're called UTM, and I'm going to get into trouble because I'm a professional. I know what all those acronyms mean, and I can't remember. Universal Tracking Metric or something. It's something Google came up with, surprise. But it's something you can append to a URL that tracks a campaign and a bunch of stuff that I can never remember what they all tie into. But basically, you can just Google it, UTM code, and you'll get a little snippet that you can stick on the end of a URL. But the value of this, when done ethically, is that you can tie in a specific campaign, specific effort into your analytics, so you know how many people are coming from what place, in which campaign. It's just kind of a manual way to pass some data into your analytics to make sense of things. So if you're like, for instance, you're sponsoring Ubuntu Summit, or they don't take sponsors, but some other event like this, you could just give them your website address. That's cool. And maybe that's good. I don't know. You won't know either, okay? But if you give them a URL that has a special page to land on, or some kind of UTM at the end that kind of gives you data, now you know that I spent $1,000 to get a sign put up in this show, and I got 2 people on my website. Not doing that again, Okay, that's useful. Failures are useful. So that's kind of what that conversion tracking is. The other thing you can do as far as conversion tracking, think about your website. You can do this in an anonymous way, so it's not like unethical, but like when somebody clicks on your submit button for your contact form, is that information being passed back to your analytics? So you at least have a generalized, anonymized way of saying, I get a ton of interest from people in Germany. What's going on here? Do you want the cube of knowledge?
So how does it work with GDPR if you are already passing like a URL with tracking information in it? So do you have to like disclose up first, sorry guy, this is like tracked or girl, whatever, but it's like just logically, because you're already passing by something that's basically from the EU standpoint like explosive, because it's already like dynamite in like.
Yeah.
So how like, because I understand
know.
the idea, but it's like, how do you present that this is tracked?
I want to get home before I answer that question. I don't want Interpol like grabbing me out of the airport. No, I don't know how GDPR manages that. You don't have to pass necessarily personal information. What you're really passing is more information about where that link was clicked. I don't know what the GDPR does about that, so follow the rules wherever you're at. Talk to an attorney. Sorry, I live in the Wild West. It's probably illegal, but they can come take away my conversion tracking from my cold, dead fingers. Just kidding. Texas. All right. Does that? I don't know how to answer it for sure. But does anyone here know? Does anyone? I know the GDPR is just tricky, and some of that still hasn't been litigated, so it's might change.
Because like from my point of view, what I see is like the GDPR is just like when you're building something for an entire world, you basically have to abide by all the laws. So basically, the GDPR is always like valid in everywhere, basically. Because
GDPR is hard because as an American that tries to figure it out, it's hard. Like, it is really.
Identify a person from this data, then GDPR doesn't apply to it.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that you get in trouble. Let's say you have just a landing page, so it's not your normal website before / event name. Like if you're getting, that's where I think it comes in as far as an ethical standpoint. You don't need a lot more detail than that. You don't need to know which person, but it's good to know roughly that I got 20 people from that event or 2. That's useful information. It's not, you don't need to violate anyone's privacy. That's really just telling you, okay, well, I should be sponsoring more events, or I shouldn't be. So I would keep it, just as a general rule, I just try to track as little as I can get away with. But I think it's reasonable to like know if your $1,000 is going somewhere. So that's what I would say. There's certain things that you'll just get automatically. You know, I don't, sometimes Google knows where they come from because they're probably spying on both sites. But you know, like your LinkedIn profile, you know, have a special URL for your LinkedIn profile. So you know who's coming from LinkedIn and who's coming from wherever. Does that make sense? That can be useful, but have a purpose. Okay, this is where people always get into trouble. Marketers, we are terrible at math or maths. For everyone that says it the proper way, but I'm going to say math. Go America. You know, the statistical significance, right? Your website, like a lot of people's website, is probably not getting tens of millions of people a month. You might be getting tens of people a month. With tens of people a month coming, it's going to take a while for you to know whether something works. Now, I don't need to tell you like mathematically what the margin of error is, but be mindful when you're tracking things that if you don't have a large sample size, it's not going to give you much. So don't draw the wrong conclusions when you're measuring things and go, oh my gosh, this is amazing, or oh no, this is terrible, when you have not a very small data set, okay? Let things run long enough, be mindful of that. And then what are we looking at on time? Because, oh my gosh, you guys are champions. I can't believe you survived this long. Try again. If at first you don't succeed, try again. You're going to have to do things over and over again. Go back as far as you need to go. If it's really not working, no matter what you do, you might have to go back to that strategic area where you're saying, you're charting this blue ocean, and you're like, well, yeah, it turns out I'm the only engineer that wants to get paid a lot, that has a lot of skills and speaks Spanish, but no one wants Spanish-speaking engineers. You know what? That's okay. That doesn't have to be the only way you market it, but that might be the level you have to go back. Now, or it just may be that the personas that you envisioned, you don't entirely understand. Talk to real people that are in these situations and maybe say, well, does this make sense? And they'll surprise you. They'll say, no, that's not what matters to me at all. If things don't work, you might have to repeat, rinse and repeat. Try again. All right. We're there. We're at the summary. Identify the opportunity, position the solution, connect with people, learn and improve. These slides will be online again. I had hoped we'd have a little bit more like writing interactive time, but hopefully you've been taking notes as you go. These are the questions. I will not repeat them. These are the ways that you position them yourself. You got to get all of them. Connecting, okay? And then learning and improving. All right. You're awesome. What questions do you have? Blown away. It's like all the potential. Do you have any specific examples or questions about your own project that you're like, how does this apply to me? Yeah, go ahead. Cube of knowledge. Go ahead.
Can you give one or a few examples? What would be an intangible value or benefit of a software?
A value, a tangible, intangible?
Yes, intangible value of software.
Okay, well, let's think of, I'm a designer, and I use Adobe, this isn't true. But Adobe, if you want to sponsor this, I'm a professional because I use Adobe, and this is industry standard, and I know my stuff because I know the industry standard tool. Is that a tangible value? Maybe, not really. Again, and that's a negative tangible value, right? But you get a sense because you're using the thing that everyone uses that you're somehow better. That would be one example that comes to mind. Do you have another example?
Yeah, I think open source itself is tangible value because like you are part of the community. And
that's a better answer. I love that. And open source can't sponsor me, so dang it. No, open source is good. Like, so an intangible value is when you use this tool and you contribute back to this tool, you help everyone in the world, right? Or you donate to this, I make it better for you. I make it better for everyone, including nonprofits and all these other people that benefit from the solution. You're using it to make evil money, but you're also helping kids in Africa get water somehow, right? You know, like those are intangible values. I guess they're somewhere in the tangible, intangible. But the intangible value, the tangible value is that maybe the technical, it goes back to the great open code base and the licensing thing. People might not get that. But the intangible value is you can feel good about using the software. We're not evil corp, right? That would be the intangible value I feel better about making an ethical software decision.
Okay. Maybe some other examples. For example, a good documentation would be intangible. Stability, for example, API, ABI stability. How do you quantify that? So community support, many things.
Yeah, that's awesome. Does that help? Thanks for making me lose my sponsorships. And what other questions you guys have? I'll wait for the ball notch.
Thank you. When you put together that video campaign for the Jamie Jellyfish release, how much of this stuff you have to put into consideration to produce that video?
Which video? I didn't hear the first part.
The Jamie Jellyfish release.
Oh yeah, that one. A fair amount. So, if we had more time, I'd show it to you. But the video is kind of set up. You can actually see very specifically in the video where we're setting up. We didn't think of it as personas, but specific types of users of Ubuntu. And so we're going through, and I'm going to get into trouble, but like makers. So we like start with kind of that space where somebody's got like a Raspberry Pi and a home lab, and then we're moving into like a business setting, then we're moving into like a machine learning kind of thing, and then we're moving into a gaming setting. So it's a short video. We don't have a lot of time to get into the specific value so much, but what we were trying to do is connect, hey, Ubuntu, it's for you. And now a lot of people are in multiple buckets, right? At work, they're doing machine learning. At home, they're tinkering. So that did go into the consideration there, where we're trying to recognize these are the multiple audiences that we're trying to reach, and Ubuntu's for you. Pretty simple. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And yeah, if you want to see the video, it's on Google somewhere. Any other questions? You guys ready to get some fresh air? Thank you for being here.